Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange. Today I'm here to bring you an anticipated release video for horror and thriller books for 2022. I know it's still a little ways off, but I'm very excited for all these books that are coming out. And I do want to mention I'm only going to be covering books from January until May. So yes, I'm aware that Riley Sager and Stephen Graham Jones have new books coming out, but they're coming out later in the year. So I'm planning on doing a follow-up video that'll come out once the end of the year titles get announced. As usual, the same disclaimers as always. So you're going to have a list of books here that are set based off of North American release dates. And of course, they are subject to change. I'm going to have information listed down in the description box. And if you're looking for science fiction fantasy, I've already done a video on that. So links down below and in the cards if I remember. Otherwise, let's get started because 2022 is going to be an amazing year for stabby books. First, in January, we have Such a Pretty Smile by Kristi DeMeester. This is a story set in a town where there is some sort of entity that is hunting down and murdering girls, but not just any girls, particularly it is focusing on girls that just won't behave. The story is told over two perspectives of two women who are always being dismissed by the men in their life, and this just sounds like an amazing, fierce feminist book. The tagline is that it is a book intended for women who have ever been told to sit down, shut up, and smile pretty. If you don't know, Kristi DeMeester is one of my all-time favorite horror authors. I loved her debut novel Beneath, as well as her short stories, and I've been dying for her to publish another novel, and this one sounds amazing. It sounds right up my alley. You know that I love feminist literature, and yeah, this one of all the books on this list is my top priority. It has high potential to become a new favorite. I'll be shocked if it's not on my end of the year favorites list. And yeah, I cannot wait to read it. Looking forward to that one a lot. I hope that you all check it out as well. Next we have The Overnight Guest by Heather Gudenkauf, and this is a thriller about a true crime writer who goes off to work in a cold, isolated area in a farmhouse. It is blizzarding outside and they're all right with that. However, you find out that the farmhouse where they are staying was actually the place of double homicide, and a young girl also disappeared that same night. And then the true crime writer has someone knock at their door, and it appears to be a young child. This book is pitched as a thriller, but it definitely sounds like it might lean into the supernatural. I've read the author before and really liked their work. So this one definitely sounds like the kind of thriller that will appeal to me because it kind of leans maybe a little bit into horror, which I'm definitely okay with. Next we have Dead Space by S.A. Barnes, and this is a piece of space horror, so yes, I included it also on my sci-fi list, but particularly it follows a group of salvagers who receive a distress call for a luxury liner that disappeared 20 years ago. They are very excited to find the ship and believe that they're going to get rich. However, when they go to do the salvaging job, well, things just don't quite go right. There are strange sounds and whispers in the dark, the lights are flickering, and well, maybe the ship is haunted. I am very excited for this one because I'm always looking for more space horror, and this one sounds like an amazing video game. The tagline is that it is the Titanic meets The Shining, and it has so much potential. I had to talk about it again on this list, and I'm dying to read it. Another one with serious favorite potential if it lands the ending that I hope it will. Then moving on to February, we have Echo by Thomas Ol Heuvelt. This follows a man who is climbing in the Alps with his best friend. However, something goes wrong and the man wakes up in a coma. He finds out that his friend was never recovered from the site and is now believed to be dead. And the man also begins to suspect that something within himself has awoken. This sounds incredible. I love horror stories that involve mountaineering and cold weather, and the idea of like some kind of ancient entity waking up inside of him sounds like possession, which I'm definitely here for if it goes in that direction. If you aren't familiar, this author wrote one of my favorite translated works. I did a review on Hex years ago, and so if I remember, I'll link that down below. But I've been dying for him to have another book translated into English so I can enjoy it. And yeah, this one is again high up on my list. I'm very excited for it. Next up, we have The Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sara Gran. This follows a book dealer who lives a very dull life and is just decided that her life is just going to be that way until she discovers a book. It's a 17th century old book of sex magic that promises unlimited power and endless, amazing, pleasurable sex. And this is described as an erotic thriller, and I'll be honest, I'm interested in it for a few reasons. One being that synopsis, it sounds great. I do enjoy a book that gets a little bit sexy. And the other reason is the fact that Sara Gran wrote one of my favorite horror possession stories, Come Closer, and so I've been really wanting her to write more horror. I think this is more of a thriller, but if it goes to a horror direction, I would be really happy. And at this point, I pretty much just want to check out everything that she's done because, again, Come Closer is such a good story. Highly recommend. Then from Titan Books, we have The Haunting of Las Lágrimas by W.M. Cleese. And this is a story of an English gardener who goes and moves to South America to work on a beautiful mansion. However, the mansion is possibly haunted. If you know my taste, you know that I normally steer clear of haunted house stories. However, this one is being compared to Mexican Gothic, which is making me very interested in it. From what I can tell of the author, I don't believe it's an own voices story. Instead, it's an author who has lived in South America. So I'm interested to see what this take is going to be. It definitely has potential, and I will certainly give it a try. Next, we have The Paradox Hotel by Rob Hart, which is a sci-fi thriller about a security guard working in a luxury hotel for time travelers. They stay there before they go off to their different historical adventures. However, at this hotel, there is a concern that possibly the tourists are getting killed off. And I included this in this video as opposed to my science fiction one because from what I can tell of the marketing, other than the fact that it involves time travel, it is first and foremost a thriller book, and I don't expect there's going to be a lot of science fiction elements in the story, but it sounds like a lot of fun. I love when the two genres cross over together, so definitely hoping that this one will live up to that premise. It sounds really fun and entertaining. Next up, we have Manhunt by Gretchen Felker-Martin, and this is a post-apocalyptic story surrounding various trans men and women trying to survive the end of the world. And while I don't read a lot of post-apocalyptic fiction, I'm interested in this one because it is an own voices trans story, and it was specifically written in response to the many post-apocalyptic stories that erase the experience of trans and non-binary people. So I believe that this book is going to be very inclusive, very queer, and I'm looking forward to its interpretation of a subgenre that, in my opinion, is done and overdone, but I'm looking forward to a fresh take on the end of the world. So interested in this one for sure. Then moving on to March, we have Sundial by Catriona Ward. This follows a woman who is running away from her past. She is trying to live a normal life with her husband and their daughter. However, she begins to be concerned when her daughter starts to act differently and possibly shows signs of darkness within her soul. She is whispering to imaginary friends and collecting bones, and her mother is just very concerned. I'll be honest, I had very mixed feelings about The House on Needless Street, so I'm cautious about this one, but I really like the premise. I'm curious about the daughter, and I really kind of like when a character, specifically a young child, is possibly possessed or leaning into evil things, or if it's all in the parent's head. The premise sounds really good. I'm concerned that the execution may not work for me, but I definitely have to give it a try and see if it works out. Next up, we have A Black and Endless Sky by Matthew Lyons, and this is a thriller following siblings who used to be very close. However, something happened, and about 12 years ago they grew apart. Now there is a divorce, and so they're getting back together, and they end up going on a road trip and are trying to kind of reignite their friendship and sibling relationship. However, something happens, there is an accident, and well, one of the siblings is possibly not themselves afterwards. It sounds like an interesting premise. I really enjoy stories that deal with the breakdown of relationships. It's something that I see a lot in horror stories, and it's definitely a trope I enjoy, so I'm hopeful for this one for sure. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to lean more towards a thriller or horror, but either way, I'm definitely going to check it out for myself. Next, I'm so excited to talk about this book, and that is Reptile Memoirs, which is a translated Norwegian thriller that is set over two different timelines, one being 13 years in the past, where we have a woman adopting a pet python snake. And then jump 13 years in the future, we have another woman who goes to the mall with her young daughter. Her daughter asks for a magazine, and the mother just finds it really annoying. She keeps asking, and so she gets fed up and leaves her daughter alone at the mall, expects her to just walk home, and wouldn't you know, when she doesn't safely come home, she has to then call the police and admit that her daughter is missing. And this book, I gotta say, it got on my radar because that premise sounds bananas crazy. I have no idea how the perspectives are going to fit together, and the mother sounds absolutely terrible, and I'm kind of here for it. So really looking forward to this one. I believe the tagline is that this is a book for cold-blooded people, and I always joke that I can be a very cold-hearted reader myself, so I certainly hope that this one will be a winner. I have to give it a try. I have no idea what I'm going to think of it, but yeah, it's got potential to be a favorite or a complete miss. Either way, I want to check it out. Next, we have the Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James, and this is a thriller that follows a true crime blogger who is interviewing a woman who was acquitted of murders many years ago. The story is told over two timelines, one being the past when the murders are taking place, and then of course here in the present day as the blogger is trying to puzzle out what happened. This book is on my radar because of the author. I read her other book, Broken Girls, and really liked that one. And this one sounds like it has a similar premise, and I think that it just has potential to be a good solid thriller, which I'm always here for. And yeah, hopefully it'll work out as well as I hope it will. Then I want to read All the White Spaces by Wilkes, and this follows a trans person named Jonathan who sneaks onto a crew that is headed off to the Arctic in order to prove themselves. However, the ship gets stranded in the cold north, and then something is possibly stalking the isolated people up there. This book is described as a trans interpretation of the Terror, and I'm really excited for that. I did read the Terror last year with my book club, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing a queer rep or queer take on a story like this. And yeah, it definitely has potential. I don't know if it's own voices or not, but either way, I'm always here for more queer horror. You cannot give me enough of it. Then moving on to April, we have The Shadow House by Anna Downs, and this follows a single woman who takes her two children to a new town to get away from her troubled past and have a fresh start. However, their move into the town triggers a set of events that the villagers have seen happen over and over again. I am hoping that this is more of a small town with secrets kind of story rather than a haunted house story, and I'm not entirely sure how much this is going to be a thriller versus a horror, but I'm always hoping for a supernatural ending, so I will definitely give this one a try and see how it works out for me. Then I want to read And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin, and this is about a virus that alters people's perceptions. It makes them see monsters that may or may not be there. The story is told from the perspective of a man who is supposedly being cured. However, he gets pulled back into his nightmares when he tries to help a friend. And I really like the premise of this one. It sounds very unique and just plays with the trope of whether or not something is real or not. Are the characters crazy, or is there actually something supernatural going on? Again, it's a trope I love, and I'm happy to read it again and again, but I think that this book takes a kind of fresh twist on it, and so I'm definitely excited to see where it goes. Next, we have The Fervor by Alma Katsu. This story is set during World War II. It's a piece of historical horror that follows a woman and her young daughter who are forced into a Japanese internment camp in America while her husband is away fighting in the war. The mother is doing her best to try to keep life as normal as possible. However, her daughter gets sick, and the story possibly takes a supernatural turn, as you would expect it would. I admit I don't read a lot of historical horror, but this premise definitely intrigues me. I have read a couple of nonfiction accounts of the Japanese internment camps that the American Japanese were forced into. It is terrible, and I would really like to see a horror interpretation of those events. It's definitely something that appeals to me. I just have to see if the actual narrative works with my brain, but definitely want to give it a try for sure. Then finally moving into May, we have Hidden Pictures by Jason Ruliak, and this follows a woman who takes on a job as a nanny in a wealthy suburban neighborhood for a young boy who keeps drawing these gruesome pictures that seem to suggest that a murder has taken place on their property. I really enjoy stories that involve children drawing pictures and, possibly an overactive imagination, or maybe not. It's something I love to read about again and again. I believe I've read from this author before. They did a kind of sci-fi coming of age nostalgic story, and so I'm definitely intrigued to see more by them. And yeah, I'm hoping that this one will give me all the good nostalgic supernatural child feels that I'm looking for. Then we have Black Tide by Casey Jones, which follows a filmmaker and a house sitter that get entangled in a one-night stand after a night of drinking during a meteor shower. When they wake up, they find out that there has been a devastating event and the world has changed and now is in the middle of an apocalypse perhaps, and they of course need to survive. This just kind of sounds interesting. I don't actually know a lot about it. I don't know what to think of it, so it's just one that I'm gonna have to try out and come back to you all with some sort of review. Next we have The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and this follows a young Mexican woman after the War of Independence in Mexico, where this woman's father was brutally executed and her home was destroyed. Now living alone, she is in a difficult spot, and so when a handsome young man proposes, she accepts, even though there are these ugly rumors that something terrible happened to his first wife. She goes along and, well, possibly terrible things ensue. This book is described as American Gothic meets Rebecca, and wow, does that sound amazing. I'm really excited for this one. It is an Own Voices story, and it just sounds like an incredible story, and I definitely think that this is one to watch for the next year. So very excited for it. I'm going to be begging to get my hands on a copy, and will absolutely report back with a review. And finally, we have Just Like Mother by Anne Hetzel, and this is a thriller following a woman who is just trying to lead a normal life after surviving and escaping the cult that dominated her childhood years. Now she has been just reconnecting with her childhood friend from the same cult. However, her friend has some kind of secretive startup business and is trying to pull her into it. I'll be honest, this book first grabbed my attention because of the cover. I love a creepy doll face, and so I'm hoping that the actual book delivers the same feelings as that visual. But in terms of the story, I'm intrigued. I have mixed feelings about secretive businesses. It's definitely giving me like Amway feels. So I'm curious to see how this one goes. I'm not sure if it's going to be up my alley, but I will give it a try and I'll let you know if I end up reviewing it. So that is it. Those are 20 horror and thriller books for 2022 that I'm most excited for, at least for the months covering again January to May. I will definitely come back with part 2 once the end of the year books have been announced, because there's going to be a lot of amazing horror books coming out around Halloween. Until then, if you're looking for more new releases, I did a separate video on science fiction fantasy, so again that's going to be linked in the cards and description box if you want to check that out. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror thrillers, science fiction, and fantasy, and I would love to hear from all of you. What is a horror thriller book that you are most excited for in the coming year? You can still help me out by giving this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, sharing it around online, and if you hit that little notification bell, you'll never miss a video from me. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.